How do the Florida Gators compare to some of their in-state rivals? Yeah, we're going to talk about it. If you're sensitive, sit this one out here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Friday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter, WNS_Brandon. And joining me now is going to be Brian Smith. Yeah, you're going to hate him, but we're going to have some fun. Joining me now for Locked On Gators is Brian Smith, Locked On's recruiting insider and the host of Locked On Seminoles, which is relevant this time. It is. Before we get started, I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On Podcast Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. And Brian, it is relevant that you cover Florida State for Locked On. It is relevant that you cover Miami for SI, which, by the way, I think that alone should make it clear that you are not a Miami fan or a Florida State fan. And I need to get that out of the way because this is about Florida as a program, Miami, comparing them to Florida State, all those comparisons that we're going to make. But we're going to start off with this Florida Gators schedule. I've talked about it ad nauseum at this point. My take on it, I think it's maybe the toughest schedule that we've ever seen in college football. And not because, you play 8 of the top 25 teams. That sucks. That's going to be hell. My main thing with it is that outside of Samford, which is week 2, you don't get any gimmies. And I feel like with Florida, I don't even want to say Mississippi State's a game. I think Mississippi State's a bad football team this year. I think that they could be good with Jeff Lebby long term, but for now, I think they're a bad football team. However, that's a road game, and Florida went and lost to Vanderbilt on the road. So I don't want to say anything's a gimme at that point. They lost to Vanderbilt in Billy Napier's first year on the road. So I don't even want to say that that's a gimme at this point. They're still an SEC team. What's your take on this schedule?
If it's not the hardest, I'm not sure what is. Especially the way it ends, you're just not afforded any opportunity to have an injury in games like 4 through 7, because 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, it's Georgia at Texas, LSU and Ole Miss, and then on the road, there's some team in Tallahassee. Oh yeah, it's Florida State. That's a 5-game stretch. It's really ridiculous, in all seriousness. So they need to be in some way, shape, or form 5-2 after 7. What do you right now? Just top of your head, 5-2, yes or no?
I think that's what you have to be.
Do you think it'll happen though? Have to be and will happen are not one and the same.
I don't know if it will, but I don't think it's not likely. Like I think that's kind of where you should wind up. That's what I'll say. I don't know if it will happen. I think it's where you should be though. Like I think that 5-2 is where you should be. I think 6-1 is possible. I've said before, I'm not as sold on Texas A&M as some people are. I understand where people land on Florida and Miami. We'll talk about that more. I do think that Miami going to Gainesville in week 1 is a big advantage for Florida. Miami's done a lot through the portal. They've got a good roster, sure. Week 1 going into Gainesville, not an easy matchup for anybody. I've said if this is week 8 that you're having that game, it's a completely different conversation. But it's not week 8. It's week 1. And I think that Florida, you haven't lost a home opener in 3 decades-ish. It's tough there. So I think the road game against Tennessee, it's hard to see a win there. Outside of that, I think Miami's your most likely loss. But even then, if you're 5-2 at that break, I think that's where you should be realistically.
The Miami game, the A&M game, the Kentucky game, they're all those, that's like one, maybe Florida screws up and they accidentally put 2 guys in the game on special teams with the same number or something.
No, nobody would ever do that. Just nobody that makes $7.1 million annually would ever make a mistake of that caliber. No shot.
That's why college football is fun, though, because stuff like that happens. And some of that stuff happens in the NFL, too. Like, there's some dumb penalties there, too. That really doesn't make sense. But I think a lot of that stuff will be cleaned up this year. That's why before Montrell got hurt, I was a little more bullish on the Gators than most people. And people were like, why? And I said, well, it's the third year, the systems and all that stuff. It's just easier. They'll have fewer dumb penalties, and they had plenty last year. And they'll probably be better in some categories with the passing game. Like, there's no way they have 39 sacks allowed this year. There's no way the passing game is not going to be better with Eugene being in year 2, and you have Badger. You've got decent tight ends. I think they're a little underrated. They got some talent. But then the whole Montrell thing, like that just puts you in a really bad spot because they don't have anybody else that's an experienced pass blocker as a running back. Like, I don't know how they're going to do 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8. That's awkward. Are you going to leave a tight end in the backfield? I mean, you can't put freshmen and sophomores back there against Miami's front and stuff like that. So that's the only reason I'm a little bit like, I don't know how to rate them early on. But, I mean, you're right about the swamp. You're right about, it's urgency because the back, like all those things are obvious to anybody. I wouldn't be surprised if they were 5-2, 6-1, but they lost 4 or 5 of those games at the end. It wouldn't surprise anybody either. All those teams could be ranked in the top 15 with every single one of those games. They could be a top 15 program, maybe even better when they play them. That is really, really brutal.
Yeah, right now those final 5 games, all in the top 13 right now. Like that's what you're dealing with. All in the top 13 right now in those final 5 games. I have to ask for you. Let's say Montrell misses the first 3 games.
Okay.
That's Miami, Samford, Texas A&M.
Going to Mississippi State.
Yeah. What do you think that looks like for Florida record-wise? If let's say Montrell's out the first 3 games,
that's hard.
He's 85% for Mississippi State.
If he misses the first 3, like you're going to beat Samford, but A&M's another team with a dominant defensive front. Who's pass blocking at the running back spot? Like, these are bad matchups. I don't know a ton about State, but that's like the one SEC stadium that I don't ever want to go to because of those cowbells. If I want cowbells, I'll listen to Blue Oyster Cult. But I don't understand how that's going to work. Is it going to be Jaden or whoever it is, the second string guy, and you got a sophomore, Trayon? Like, how does that work? I'd be fearful their only win would be the Samford game. I don't like the order of their games very much. Of course, nobody in the SEC has bad D lines, so I don't know. They would have if they're 1-2, they better beat Mississippi State, or things are going to start fishtailing.
Yeah,
I'll check into your podcast that week if they're 1-2. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I might get fired if that happens. There will be expletives flying. I will say this. We'll talk more about the schedule in a minute. But I will say also, as far as who's going to be pass blocking, Hayden Hansen, one of the starting tight ends, spent, I think it was a third of his snaps last year, a third of his passing down snaps last year in pass protection. And toward the South Carolina-ish game, he started lining up as an H-back in pass protection. Wouldn't shock me if we see that happen earlier this year, as early as the Miami game, depending on what their approach is going to be. Because, last year, South Carolina game, we saw him start motioning in, and he'd be lined up right behind or right between left tackle, left guard. He'd be lined up there. Just if they get in, that's his responsibility. One of the best blocking tight ends around, I think, which, first off, I'm not unbiased about Hayden. He's on the show every week in the season. I'm going to be hyped about him. There's a reason that I chose him to be on the show. And 2, again, I think that he's a really good blocker. He's 6'8", 270. It's a lot of size. It's a big dude there. It's damn near offensive tackle size. And I know that he hates that people constantly go, hey, is he going to move to offensive tackle? He hits 21 miles per hour on the GPS this spring. He's not moving to offensive tackle. He's going to be a tight end still. But we are going to talk about just this schedule and the team next on Locked On Gators. I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and sports just aren't sports and like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. Hell, I might throw a parlay on a couple home runs tonight. Why not? This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. Remember that FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. I don't know if you know this. Yeah, it's time. We are 2 weeks away from the Florida Gators opening their season hosting the Miami Hurricanes. And I gotta look fresh for it, you know? I gotta look fresh. We gotta have some Gator gear. Gotta have comfy Gator gear that's pretty breathable. You don't know who I'm talking about yet? That's right. I'm talking about Home Field, the exclusive apparel sponsor of Locked On Gators. And we got the can't miss kickoff 2024. Yeah, it's that time. So you got football boxes, coaches' jackets, bomber jackets, Champs Week, and add 5 new schools to the Home Field roster. They got everything. They got Pepperdine, they got Toledo, they got everything. The highlight of the campaign, Home Field's football boxes. 55 schools will get a box filled with exclusive items. 3 never-before-seen items for your school, not available anywhere else. You can get a Platinum Box VIP, so you can get a hat, a ringer. You can get a koozie, 20% off, early access. Just saying, they're out now. Go get it. They will sell out soon. So go get it now. And if you want to save a little bit of money, just a little bit, I don't know. I like saving money. You can put in code GATOR24 and save some money with homefieldapparel.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. I am Brandon Olsen. Joining me is Brian Smith. And with this schedule, we talked about the beginning. We talked about the end. That middle stretch isn't the easiest either. You've got UCF in Gainesville, which, we know that. I also think one of the things about this schedule is that you're going to play probably a lot of good offenses. Mississippi State, I don't care even what they have personnel-wise. They run that Brile spread. They're going to put up points at some point, which we could also argue they won't do so much. Last year, Austin Armstrong put on a clinic against Tennessee, running a very similar offense. Mississippi State has that offense. UCF has a really fun offense, but UCF, Tennessee, Kentucky. Tennessee's on the road. The other 2 games are home. Florida's lost 3 in a row to Kentucky. Billy Napier's lost 2 in a row to Kentucky. UCF, KJ Jefferson is going to be their starting quarterback this year. They also brought in Jakari Brown from Miami, but KJ is going to be a starting QB this year. KJ went into the swamp last year and beat you with a 2-7 Arkansas team. And then you're on the road against Tennessee. What does that stretch look like for you? And I know that before you even answer that, I know that there's people in the comments cursing me out for not going, oh, yeah, you're going to win those games at home. I think you should win those games in the swamp. I think you should win every game in the swamp. Granted, this year, one of those is LSU and Tennessee. One of those is LSU. One is Ole Miss. Those are going to be tough. They're going to be playoff teams. Tennessee is one of your road games. What do you think about that UCF, Tennessee, Kentucky stretch?
UCF, you get a bye before, and that's a rivalry that's kind of goofy in this. You got to live here to understand it. But UCF will have more motivation for that game than Florida. And if you're a Gators fan, that should bother you. So, I don't know. But Gus's offenses, I was with some Auburn guys the other day in the media, and we were looking at some of those goofy play calls from the 2016 Auburn-Clemson game when they had guys running old box offense, 1915 Notre Dame stuff. When Newt Rockne was there, you never know what Gus is going to do. So that game, I wouldn't touch with the 10-foot pole. Tennessee's got Nico. I'll take Tennessee. And then Florida is playing Kentucky, and the coach is already bitching out loud about stuff. I don't like Kentucky there. They've lost to Kentucky 3 years in a row. I'll take Florida. But the other 2, no offense, I'm not betting against Nico. I'm not at home. He's really, really good.
Yeah, that's fair. As far as UCF, I will also say they play Colorado the week before, so hopefully they'll get like media outraged out there, media fatigued a little bit, because that's going to be just absolutely disgusting. I'm already sick of it. Florida plays Colorado in like 6 years, and I already hate it. Just the possibility of it.
There's no chance he's there. None.
There can't be, right? Like he can't possibly be the coach still. His sons will be gone, so he just might call it once they're both gone, when he's convinced that they're going to be on the same NFL team. Completely delusional. Love to see that one. But final record prediction I'd like to hear for you for Florida this year.
5-7 or 6-6. That UCF game is my biggest swing game. I don't know how to pick that one. I don't know which one. They're going to beat either LSU or Ole Miss, if not both. You watch. I'm going to tell you right now, LSU is my disappointment team in the SEC. Their defense stinks. Okay? Tell your girlfriend if she needs to get an LSU helmet on and go help their secondary. They suck. If Florida is not a better passing team this year, I think we'll all be surprised. And I think Graham Mertz pretty darn good. LSU couldn't even cover their own receivers in the spring game, and they know all the plays. Okay, it's your own deal. Guys are just running wide open. How are you going to do against teams that you don't know? I think they'll score a bunch. Like, you better bring your offense against LSU because they got players. Kyron Lacey might be the best receiver in the league after they had 2 first-round picks. It is
really good offensive line, too.
Oh, their offensive tackle accommodation is the best country. So
I don't think you can argue that one. I think if you argue it, you shouldn't be allowed to argue things anymore. I think that's where we're at on how good their offensive tackle situation is. Interiors obviously not as good, but that's because they have the best tackles in. They might have 2 of the top 5 tackles in the country this year. It's kind of nuts, just their situation. You mentioned Graham Mertz. Better, I think, better than a lot of people expected. When he came to Florida, I said, hey, I don't know if he wins you any games. I don't think he wins you games, but I'm pretty confident he won't lose you games. I know that people talk about I think it was 11 picks he had in his final year at Wisconsin.
Look who he's throwing to.
And that offense is. I've made when he came over, I was like, okay, well, he was
63 Bears.
Yeah, I said that it was like a 1905 offense before the forward pass was allowed in football. Like it was just the worst thing ever. When they threw it, it was an impossible situation. It's like, oh yeah, 3rd and long, we're gonna throw it and try to throw past the sticks. Just nonsensical offense there. But this is the callback, listeners. This is the callback for why it's relevant that Brian is here. Brian, you're right for all Hurricanes. You host Locked On Seminoles. You're here on Locked On Gators pretty dang frequently, and you've been watching the Florida Gators, obviously prepping because you gotta cover them twice this year.
Right.
And I have to ask the quarterback situations. Can I get a ranking from you on them between Cam, Graham, and DJ?
Cam's
current players.
Cam's the most talented. Graham's the safest. DJ's the I don't know. That's how I would kind of put it in words. As far as ranking, I think that Cam was 1 slightly above Graham, but I can see you picking because 72.9%. He's 72.9%, but he threw everything like 8 yards and in. So I mean that's just what they gave him. But and the offensive line didn't allow for a whole lot more in terms of reading a defense. It is what it is. Like I said the other day. If you switch and give him Miami's offensive line from last year, totally different deal. They only gave up like 16 sacks or something like that. He did not get that. I don't think DJ can be in the top 2 because he's just never got – he just peaked like middle of his sophomore year. Hasn't changed. So he's not bad. I just don't think that he's a game changer at all. And Mertz had a better year than he did last year. So I'll go with Mertz over him.
Yeah, I'm not going to fight you on those. As long as DJ is number 3, I'm not going to fight you. I think that I think personally
that's all.
Yeah, personally, I would put Graham above Cam just because the turnovers that Cam's had with the 14 fumbles.
That's insane. By the way, I've never seen that stat before.
Yeah, that's insane. So that's why, like, personally, I'd put Graham over Cam there. I love Cam. I've said this before. Like, I've known Cam dating back to the Incarnate Word days. I think he's a better NFL prospect, but
it's upside for the NFL.
Yeah, he's got a ton of upside. I think he's a better NFL prospect. I know that I said that the other day, and I got a comment that was like, he's not going to get drafted higher than Graham. I think he will. Graham's going to be a sixth-year guy. Cam won't be. Cam's got the better physical traits, and NFL GMs are so certain that they can fix anybody. It's just the bad boyfriend thing they have. It's just like, oh, he'll be better for me, right? No, he won't. But NFL GMs are convinced they can do that. We are about to talk about where the Florida Gators might improve, might not improve next on Locked On Gators. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer that it gets to the first pitch with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can also buy college football tickets there. That's how I bought my tickets to the Miami game. I will be sitting front row, section, I think it's 15, maybe 16, corner of the end zone. That's where I'll be. That's where I was for the Utah game a couple years ago. I'll be right back there this time. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for being Locked On Gators, your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. Brian Smith joining me. I am Brandon Olsen. And yeah, we want to talk about where the Florida Gators might be most improved and where they might not be most improved. You could say progression, regression, whatever you want to call it. But I'm just curious, Brian, from your point of view, as in from the outside perspective, where do you think the Florida Gators will probably be most improved in 2024?
This is one of my favorite stats in football, and it's something they track probably more in the pros because it's even harder to do. Passing plays of 20 or more yards. I mean, just without even looking at the number, and I'll pull it up here in a sec, I'm going to guess that Florida is in the bottom 25 to 30 teams because they threw a lot of short passes and they got guys that can make guys miss, but it had to be a low total. So with Eugene being back, knowing the offense, it's got some progression with Graham. You got Badger, you got your tight ends back. And for the love of mankind and for Graham's back, let's hope the offensive line is better. I think they're going to be able to throw it down the field more. Do you have any sense that is not accurate?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that one of the main things, and I've said this a lot, and I think that a lot of Florida Gators fans get mad at me when I say it, Graham Mertz, to me, is physically capped. I don't think he's mechanically sound. And I think for a lot of quarterbacks, that's where they make that next jump. You know, it's like we see the Josh Allens, and it's like, oh, he's got a big arm, but he's a mess mechanically. You fix the mechanics, you get a lot better. There's some quarterbacks where you go, hey, maybe he doesn't have a big arm, but if we fix the mechanics and he can drive throws better, maybe he'll get better and pick up a little bit of arm strength there. We see that. I think Graham is pretty mechanically sound. I don't think that he's going to make this big drastic jump. He's very experienced. He's in year 6 for himself here. Sure. I think that what he needs to do in order to drive the ball downfield, though, is be able to step into throws. He's not going to Anthony Richardson flick of the wrist and it goes 40 yards thing. So I think that for Graham, that expected improved offensive line will kind of help him there because he will be able to step into throws. Where last year, he literally was getting offensive linemen backed into him. He wasn't the one that had Damian George thrown into him with one hand. That was Max Brown, who's now at Charlotte. But that would have been Graham if Graham was on the field. But I think that that's going to be one of the biggest differences this year is having an offensive line that is going to be better in pass protection, which I will say recent reports in camp have been that there may be some concerns on one specific side of the offensive line still. I I'm not as worried as some other people are about it just yet, just because they had injuries in the spring. These guys are just starting to practice with each other now. And for me, I think offensive line chemistry is the most important part, where actually having chemistry there. I think it's more about your unit and less about individual players. They're all playing together now, so hopefully that'll be improved. But yeah, I think the deep ball, and honestly, I think the same exact flip side of things as far as allowing passes of 20 plus yards downfield is going to be maybe the most improved area for Florida. You look at last year, they had 3 defensive backs allow 20 yards per catch on average. They had another 2 allow 18 plus yards per catch on average, and another 2 allow 15 yards per catch on average. So I think that when you look at where they'll be most improved defensively, I think it's that. I think it's that, you won't have those bombs, because that was the thing with Florida too, is that they'd get themselves into good situations and they'd be like, oh yeah, 3rd and 11. And it's just, okay, well, 40-yard completions. That doesn't help you.
Well, here's the other thing. Like, they were such a big team up front, and I know they had some injuries, this and that. But like, their rushing defense, I thought they would be pretty good at that last year. And then, of course, I turned on the Kentucky game, but that's another story. Like, Florida's rush defense was horrendous. How is that possible? Just at Florida in general, but they gave up 155.6 a game, 81st. 81st. 4.8 yards a carry. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, a certain defense coordinator in Gainesville was bragging about how complex his defense was and all that. Apparently, it was too complex for the players. So, are we dialing it back, or what are we doing in Gainesville?
Here's my thought process on it. Scooby Williams was one of your starting off-ball linebackers last year. And like I've said a billion times, like, I love Scooby. He seems great. I don't think he's an SEC starter quality linebacker. I think he's better suited to the edge. Shamar James got injured, so you were stuck with Derek Wingo out there as one of your linebackers, which Derek, I have no problem with Wingo. I think he's a fine run defensive linebacker there. Taraja Mitchell was out there. He's out of eligibility, not on an NFL team, not in an NFL camp, none of that. So I think that where your issue really lied in was your defensive line was not attacking enough, which is one of the reasons that Sean Spencer is one of the very few coaches that Billy Napier has fired throughout his entire career. So your defensive line changed with Gerald Chapman now. So I think that's one of the big improvements. Ron Roberts is your inside linebackers coach now. Big improvement. Jay Bateman went to go be the defensive coordinator at Texas A&M now. But your linebacker personnel changed, and I think that was one of your biggest flaws. I think that, your defensive line was big. They were eating blocks. Linebackers were not coming up and making plays. We had one clip that went kind of viral where Princely Umanmielen shot to the inside of the tackle. The run went to the outside of the tackle. And I think it was a Georgia scheme guy posted it. And he was like, oh, you don't go in. And Princely was like, which we all know for Florida Twitter fingers out there. Princely was like, oh, no, I was supposed to shoot inside. The linebacker was supposed to go to the outside. You look at the clip, and Scooby Williams goes to the inside behind Princely. And so things like that happened. That was in the Kentucky game. So things like that happened frequently. And I do think that it'll be improved. I think that linebacker with Pup Howard, especially, like Shamar James back and healthy after getting injured last year. Pup Howard here. I don't know. Like, and I don't put too much stock into the spring game, but you put Pup out there, and Pup is just a menace. There were very few people that tackled Jaden Ball one-on-one. Pup was doing it soundly. So I think that's where they'll be one of the most improved areas. I have to ask you, though, where do you think they won't be most improved?
Well, I mean, their passing defense, you already talked about that. I mean, it can't be worse, really, but I think the better way to define it, will it be good enough if they can get to 6-6? First off, that's the first question, and it's iffy. Is everybody healthy before I say anything else? To your knowledge. Corners, safeties?
Nothing concerning, we'll say. Like, there's a couple guys in like non-contact, like every so often, but
Sure.
Nobody that were expected to be out.
Well, I just know last year, depending on how you want to rank it, Jordan Castell for a freshman last year was pretty good, by the way, but Devin Moore was banged up part of that. He might have been the best corner they had last year.
I think he was.
And if he's on the field for 12 games, he'll probably help them win a game they shouldn't. Maybe it's the A&M game. Maybe it's the UCF game. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. Maybe it's all of them. But you need somebody to step up, because Marshall gave up 21 yards of play last year per completion. Excuse me.
Yes.
You guys got beat over the top more than anybody. And I know part of that's safety help. There's a combination of things, but I'm just worried without Princely, they're not going to have enough pass rush. So that's the fine. And you just have to wait and see. Because, they've got some pretty talented guys. It's just he's young. I like Searcy. He's a good player. But, is he good enough as a sophomore to be the main guy? And who's the backup?
They're still having that battle out there. So could be someone like George Gums who's coming in. Could be, if Jack Pyburn's healthy, it could be LJ McCray out there as their next guy. It could be Cam James as your next guy. They're still sorting that one out.
It's getting kind of late in the ball game here.
Yeah, I was going to say that my biggest, I don't even want to say downgrade, because I don't know if it'll be a downgrade, but it's probably my biggest area of concern right now is figuring out the pass rush in general. I know that a lot of Florida Gators fans hate Princely, whatever. I don't care about that. He's productive as a pass rusher. Caleb Banks was your second most productive pass rusher, and he had half the production. Granted, on the interior, it's different. And I will say this, from reports that we've heard and on paper, I think the pass rush could be fine, but I don't care about on paper, and I don't care about the reports that we've heard. Caleb Banks could be your leading guy. Joey Slackman is someone that I have pretty high expectations for on the interior, but not necessarily as this game-changing pass rusher.
I think he's too mechanical for that.
Yeah, you've got TJ Searcy has the tools, but
he's a sophomore.
Yeah, I need to see it full-time. I don't think that Cam Jackson is ever going to be a good pass rusher. I just think he's a pure nose tackle. Jamari Lyons was someone that I thought would be a really good pass rusher from the nose spot. He's out for the year. He's done.
He's done for the year.
Done for the year.
That's rough, brother.
Yeah, done for the year. Kelby Collins is going to be playing the 3-tech now, so maybe he'll be an interior rusher. But, yeah, I think pass rush specifically on the edge is a concern for me. Justice Boone and Tyreek Sapp, we've never seen them be really productive. Justice Boone showed promise towards ACL last year, missed that time. Tyreek Sapp was your fourth leading pass rusher last year with a whopping 13 pressures in all or 11 games, because he did miss one. But I think that's my main concern right now. It's just, I don't know if you have the good pass rush built together. I think as a unit, you might be better, but yeah, I think for me, that's my main concern defensively. It's just, you got to put a pass rush together, because last year they only gained pressure blitzing. That's it.
Well, statistically, they came in 101st in sacks, 22nd or 22 as a unit, and you lost Princely. I'm sure the secondary will be better because it can't be much worse, but are they even going to be a top 50 pass rush? I wouldn't put anything more on that than maybe even money.
I don't think they were last year. I don't think I'm fairly certain they weren't last year. Florida State had 293 pressures last year. Just because we're talking in-state comparisons. That's why I'm talking about them. Miami had 255 pressures last year. Florida had a whopping 187. So 70 less than Miami, 106 less than Florida State. I will also say, not to do the whole SEC schedule thing, Florida was behind in a lot more games, or at least in neutral situations.
Teams ran the ball. And they should have.
Yeah, at least in neutral situations where teams were running the ball against them, as opposed to, Miami leading games. Not many more games than Florida did, but leading games. And Florida State obviously went undefeated in the regular season and the conference championship. So that's another thing. Both those teams played one more game than Florida did Florida State played two more games than Florida did in 2023 because Florida did not make a bowl. Miami made a bowl, lost to Rutgers. Florida State won the ACC championship, lost by 60 to Georgia. More games played, but I mean, just from a pure per down basis, they were a hell of a lot more productive. That was a fun note to end the week on, Brian. Thanks for that. I'm glad that that's where we're ending. But thank you so much, Brian, for joining us 2 days in a row. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever in the podcast. We'll be back. Guess what? A little bit later today, we've got a crossover episode with Alex Dono of Locked On Canes. We're talking fall camp. We're talking this matchup. It's going to be juiced, and we're both going to be in Gainesville for the game. So you can meet both of us. I will be at the Florida Victorious event on August 30th. By the way, if you want to sign up, you can use promo code LOCKED. Save some money when you sign up your first month on Florida Victorious. Just saying. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33, and I'll see you all next time.